Please listen carefully.
Welcome to the Retail Conversations podcast. This is Morten Max. Some brief housekeeping before I bring you today's guest. We have just for the first time reached out to you and our network in relation to a future conversation we will have with Nick Shackleton-Jones. Nick is the Director of Learning and Performance Innovation at the PA Consulting Group in London. And they help organizations who want to improve performance, build engagement, and modernize their approach to learning. You are invited to help us shape the conversation we will have actually. What would you be interested in hearing us talking about? What perspective on learning, engagement, or performance are you particularly curious about? And maybe what pressing issues do you face in your learning and development setup that Nick could and should give his take on? If you have anything, please send your comments to info@retailconversations.dk, and also let us know if you would like to remain anonymous if we should use your input. Do also send us those stars on your podcast app and any feedback you might have. It's again on retailconversations@maxretail.dk. And even though the conversations themselves is actually the joy of this journey, it's always nice to hear that the podcast fits your train, car, or flight trips very well, and that you find some value in listening to it. That puts a smile on my face. And on a final housekeeping note, the next conversation that we will launch is the one with Mark Christian Riebe. Look out for that one. Today I am speaking with Christina Wedel. Christina is a personal shopper and speaker, an independent service and sales trainer, and she also has a big passion for cars. Now, isn't that a cool mix? She is also the author of 2 books on the topic of personal styling. The recent one, and actually newly published one, is her guide to looking good, also after the age of 45. Christina is a bundle of energy and confidence, and I'm pretty sure that you will get the same feeling when listening to our conversation. We cover many different angles as we usually do in these conversations, but mainly we focus a lot on the fashion industry, talking about personal styling, service and sales, and the importance of product knowledge. So buckle your seatbelt and get ready to go. Here is Christina Wedel. I am here with Christina Wedel. Christina, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Christina, just to frame it for the listeners out there, we don't know each other that well. We have met for a couple of years ago when we did a cooperation in Sweden on a service and sales training we did for something in Jack & Jones, right? But that's basically all the cooperations we've had, even though you've been in the business for more years than I have actually.
I guess so, yeah.
But it was just clear to me when we did that program together in Sweden that you were such a cool profile, and besides that, you're also competent, of course.
Thank you.
It's just funny that people in our network, especially here after I have started my own little company, they are telling us that we should start talking together again.
Absolutely.
In relation to that, I found it extremely relevant to actually invite you to this podcast and talk a lot about your field of expertise within this business, and also the shared passion we have for increasing the consumer's experience.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you in relation to especially the personal shopper aspect of the retail world and all those elements that go into play in that aspect. And on top of that, I also know that you are really keen on talking about the concept of saving on resources in retail, and also the concept of that service is about not selling.
Yep.
So we'll dig into all of these things. But first and foremost, Christina, please let the listeners get to know you a little bit on your journey and where you are now.
Okay. Well, I'm Christina and I'm 48. I live in Copenhagen and I have 2 grown children. And I have been in the fashion business since I was 22. I am actually trained, if you can call it that, as a makeup artist in London. I wanted to get into that business. I wanted to do film and TV, and That took me to London for 3 years and then to the States for 2 years. And when I came back in 92, the whole commercial television and fashion business had just opened up for what's called a stylist. And the stylist in Denmark is the person who helps, whatever it's a model or a presenter on TV or a personality, to dress and have a profile, clothing wise and makeup and hair. And I realized very quickly when I came back from there and that in Denmark, you are not just a stylist. You either have to be a hairdresser or something else. So I decided to combine makeup and styling. And that gave me a profile in the business in Denmark where nobody else did that. Either you did clothes or you did hair and makeup. And I didn't do hair, so I would always bring a hairstylist and I would do the clothing. That meant for the client that they saved a post, so they saved money. So I got a lot of jobs. Obviously the business hated me for that, but I have never tried to be likable. I have just always tried to be successful.
Interesting distinction, yeah.
Yes. And doing that, I mean, when you work with models and TV presenters, it's more like playing dollhouse. It's actually not so personal. And when I started to get the first celebrities, I realized that where my passion was not just to dress them to look good, but was to dress them to perform good. So if I had somebody who had to go on TV or a TV show, I didn't just put the latest fashion. I made sure to get to know the person and to actually give them a wardrobe that would make them calm and relaxed and be able to read the manuscript or perform in whatever way they had to. And it turned out that that was my talent. So I did that for many years, but on the sideline, I have always been very interested in the exact same thing, is to make people happy. And that sounds very shallow. And I don't feel like I'm a Mother Teresa, but anything where people spend money, I want them to leave my business and feel that they achieved something that they can take with them out in their lives. So I did a television program in, I don't know, whenever that was, 2003, the equivalent to the big British hit called What Not to Wear with Trini and Susanna, which is a big makeover television program. And Zulu TV in Denmark did a copy of that. And that is the first time I got real people in my hands, meaning not fashion people or TV presenters, but couples, real couples, young couples living all over Denmark. And we, the team behind the program, had to style them and make them feel comfortable. And the thesis was that we should satisfy his wish how she should look and her wish how he should look. That meant quite a big analysis. And I realized then, what I know now, is that all women, their biggest dream is to have a stylist. Basically, to have someone who would come into their wardrobe either every morning or at least a few times a year and tell them what suits you, what doesn't suit you, where should you get it, how do you save money, how do you prevent buying the wrong things. After that TV show, I decided to change route. Now we were in 2006 or 7, and I had already been doing TV and stuff like that for a long time, and I wanted to use my brain. So I decided to become a personal shopper. And doing that, all I had to do was basically, because I already had a very strong website that I had used as my business card for a long time. I used it as a blog. I would blog once or twice a week about whatever subject women would ask. So I already had a kind of a profile social media wise. So it was not very difficult for me to announce that now I was a personal shopper. And personal shopper sounds very fashionable and expensive. And just to get that thing off the table, I cost 1,000 kroner per hour when I am a personal shopper. I have packages where you can get me for 4 hours or 6 hours. You can get a card where you save if you buy me 5 times and so on. So that's kind of built up like a small commercial business. But I realized that this was not going to be the high-end, rich customers on the coast of Copenhagen. This was going to be the everyday woman all over Denmark. And I was basically aiming towards women to start with, because I felt that was my talent. But right now, and for the last 10, 15 years, it's been like 60% women, 40% men. And the men, they just come because they Google you. They just want somebody to fix their wardrobe. It's not a question of how do I get a better self-esteem or how do I get a new husband. It's just how do I get the right clothes really cheap, really fast into my wardrobe. Whereas women is like a big mental thing. And I have been doing that for the last 15 years. I think we are two, maybe three, but I think we are actually two really professional personal shoppers in Denmark. So the competition is not big. And I have marketed myself through the television show. I'm very commercial. I'm not afraid of using my own voice or work or even my own body to promote myself. So I'm very good at getting into television and radio and so on. So I've always been good at promoting myself. And then I got into email marketing, and I did a course with a wonderful lady that I think you should do a podcast with one day, called Christina Wedel. She taught me how to take my one-to-one business, which I come, I style you, I shop some clothes, or I come, I do your makeup, and that's it. And she taught me to be an expert. So I took it from a one-to-one business to I could now start to do speeches where I had 20, 30, 100 women in front of me, which was very good for my business, because I could do like an expert show on self-esteem or what's your body type, whatever. And afterwards, I would get all these bookings as a personal shopper. So that kind of ties it all up. And I have written 2 books. The first one in 2009. When you write a book, you obviously get into the media again, really good. Same time you can pronounce or announce that you are a personal shopper. I just came out with my last book here in October 2017. And both of the books are about styling, because I have made an expert out of myself. My blog is very visited. I don't actually have a huge mailing list, but I have a very, very high conversion rate, which is good. I have a very keen and loyal readership. So that's very good. And along with this, and that's why we met, along with this, I have become a person that the fashion business and especially the retail business would take in, because I have been in the shops with my clients year after year. I'm on the floor, I'm out there with the clients. So I both hear what the clients are wishing and thinking of. I also see what the shops are doing right and doing wrong. So I don't know even how it happened. I think it started with Noah Noah. Many years ago, there was somebody there who invited me in to do a kickoff where I would, just after the design team had presented the latest collection for the business to business and the sales division, I would come in with my more commercial fashion view on the collection, and I would go through the collection explaining it to the people who's going to sell it, not just showing it. Because when you have a fashion brand and you have a team of designers, they have worked for maybe a year before this collection comes out. They have made mood boards, they've been traveling, they've been inspired by whatever's going on in the world, maybe by old movies and stuff. And now they have to communicate the message behind the collection. And when you work, and you've been in the fashion business, so you know this, when a designer is brought up, they're not actually very extrovert. They're not actually very selling. To be a designer is an introvert job where it's like a baby. So getting the sales team to stand up, or getting the design team to stand up and try to sell it to the sales team, is a mistake, because they are actually standing there not wanting to brag or to show off. So for me to come in, and let me give you an example. When there's a designer and she has made 4 different jackets, she will pull out a jacket. There's a whole room full of buyers, and it could even be the franchise buyers. It could be the in-house sales, whatever. There's a lot of people in there who needs to know how to sell this. And all she does is she explains the color, the fabric, and the price. And they would do it over and over again. And they would sit there and they would die of boredness. They would just stand there and explain, and we did this in green, black, and white. It comes from size this to size that, and the retail price is this, and the markup is drop, and everyone was like dead. And I've loved being there, because I would take the exact same collection and I would have made stories. I would do storytelling. I would explain, this is 4 good dresses for a woman with a big butt and a small waist. This is the perfect jacket for the woman who has big breast and broad shoulders. This is the perfect pants for the short, fat lady. This is and that makes sense, because the biggest problem, and we'll get back to this later, but the biggest problem is actually selling, storytelling the product to the end consumer. And how do I know this? That I do because I have been the personal shopper. So I have, throughout these 15 years, built up a huge knowledge of things we think that the client knows that she doesn't know. Every morning when most women get up, they look in their wardrobe and they feel they have nothing. You can be rich, poor, small, big, fat, intelligent, not intelligent, educated, not educated. Most women, 80% of the women in the world, do this every morning. And that's a good market. But what we have to remember is that whenever the collection changes, the story changes. So just because you have a clothing shop where you sell blazers, tops, dresses, whatever, you still have to keep communicating, who is this for? Because we still have the problem that when the client comes into the shop, most women assume automatically there's nothing for me in here today. And that's actually where I operate. So when we worked together, you were the manager, or you were running the course that we did. And I don't know if you remember what we did, but you used me as a tool how to actually communicate the clothes on that actual sales course that we did. And that inspired me to move on, not only doing kickoffs, but actually starting to maybe get in on the floor and actually teaching the staff in the retail, especially clothing business, how to be a personal shopper every day. So that's actually my frame. My frame is, you're not just sales assistant. You are supposed to be an expert in your products. You're supposed to be a personal shopper for the client. And that's the angle I have in my courses. So I have over the last 10 years, and specifically the last 6 years, I have made parallel to my personal shopping business, I have made a consultant business where I go out and I teach the staff on the floor how to communicate the clothes by looking at the client, by styling the client, by not just saying what they heard on a boring sales meeting, but by actually learning how to make that specific woman in front of you happy. And that's back to my beginning, because I like to make people happy when they spend money on whatever I give them.
With your journey and your passion within this personal shopping and making people happy using their money, you could say, it opens up the door to many different aspects that we can dig into a lot.
Yeah.
When you look at the retail industry, you can look at it on the Danish market for a second here.
Yeah.
And put on your personal shopper goggles or glasses here.
Yeah.
And say, okay, so how good are we at the moment in terms of, how styled are we in terms of the retail industry being a personal shopper for the end consumer?
Well, if you give me a scale from 0 to 10, I would say 2.5.
Where 10 would be the best, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, that means there's a big potential out there.
Absolutely.
When you look at the retail market, for instance, in Denmark, and you say that the quality of what we're seeing at the moment is at a 2.5 out of a 10, what are the easy things that we can do to get a higher score in your world?
It is to implement, preferably on a daily, but better twice a week, or even if necessary, once a week training, on the floor training. Now, you're a consultant in training and sales, so am I. We both know that there's lots of us out there who has a course. Either you turn up and you stand jumping up and down, screaming, giving funny words and coming with our best talent, and everyone is excited and inspired, and after 2 weeks, 80% of it is gone. I realized that, not specifically with me, because I decided right when I started, I don't want it to be like this. So I have been working on trying to make a sales training course that will last. But I realized as the whole business is suffering, I mean, they are suffering, but it's also a mindset that we are suffering. That's my true belief. We are whining. The retail business is whining because at the same time, they actually cut down. I know everyone has to cut down, but they cut down exactly where they shouldn't cut down, because the only thing that's lacking, when you ask me, where's the low-hanging fruits, is that the people who work in clothing shops in Denmark are not proud. It is not a fashionable job that you brag about, which I do not understand, because it's a very, very good training scene for anything else that you want to do in your life. But it doesn't have that likability as, I don't know, training in Maersk, or I don't know. There's so many other businesses where even though you have the lowest rated job, you know that it's going to take you somewhere. Now it has to do with the hour rate. It has to do with the whole culture here in Denmark. I mean, if you go shopping in Copenhagen, the best-selling people that you get are from Sweden. They import them. The shops that has really high level of shopping and styling experience are the little shops that are slowly dying. Because there's actually a owner who went out and bought some stuff, and she knows every style that she bought, and she's either there with one or two assistants. But the big houses, the big retail groups, they never reach out to the last girl who is behind the cashier or in the front or in the back or selling on the floor. They try, but they don't try hard enough.
And what you're saying here is one of the easiest and areas where you should focus as a corporate retailer here is to focus on what do we do on the floor to train them once a week, more times a week or whatnot, right?
Yes, and the thing is, we are very shy. Rumor is that we're cool and we're sexy and we're open, and we're not. We are closed, we're easily embarrassed, we are afraid of going too far. And at the same time, we're wondering why any foreigner from any other country is complaining about the low level of service that we have in Denmark. Now, for me, it's not a question of training on the floor. For me, it's a question of getting the staff to know the products. What is the difference between an A-line skirt, a pencil skirt, a tight skirt, a short skirt? Who's it good for? How do you recommend it? What do we have? Which qualities do we have? Nobody ever takes the time to do this. And this is the only way you can train young, as they are very often, young people in their 20s to actually go up to a client and want to give them a good advice in order to make them to buy something. They will never do it if they don't know what they're talking about. Because that's how we are. Danish people do not want to fail. We would rather not try in order not to fail. You have to give your staff a tool where you can actually recognize different kind of people with different kind of bodies. So instead of saying, oh, we just got these new wonderful coats in, we have them in 5 colors. The client has no idea what that means. She might just be looking for a black coat. But if you teach your staff to explain the 5 different cuts that the coat has, this is where the personal shopping angle comes in. Then you actually have a natural selling tool that is not selling, because you're actually giving free advice, something that people are paying me 1,000 kroner an hour to do, and they're happy to do it, and I have long waiting lists. At the same time, we do not even want to offer money on training our staff in actual product knowledge. That means that you have somebody coming in, she might be 22, maybe she was working in 7-Eleven, now she has to work with clothes, and you as a retail manager or even a retail business, you assume that everyone who wants to work in a clothing shop knows about clothes. And if they don't know, and you don't ask them, what can we do to make you better? She will never be better, and you will always be disappointed.
I think it's a very interesting balance that we're talking about here, not focus as well, because product knowledge as a competence is extremely relevant and more relevant than ever, I think, in the business. And I think you're right on the money on that one. At the same time, I also see a struggle here because some of the companies that I know that are trying to boost the product knowledge level in terms of creating the material, the content, the training, and actually doing something about it. The problem is it's not getting transferred into using that knowledge when the consumer is in the store. And I think we totally agree on this one.
Yeah.
One thing is that you gain confidence when you have the knowledge. Mm-hmm. That, of course, when I faced it in the earlier days in Jack and Jones, I didn't know anything about clothes. I didn't even know how to style myself, and I probably still don't know. But you would probably look at me and give me a 2 out of a 10. But my point is, there is a gap here still, even though the quality of the product knowledge, some places are in focus, but it's still not giving the staff enough that it makes them use it.
No.
And I know that there are many different elements for why that is not happening. So I'm not declining on what you're saying. I just think you're also saying that it's probably combined to something more as well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm in my training, I'm very focused on what do you do as a shop manager? What do you do Monday, Tuesday until Sunday? What's your process? Because everyone knows that they come in at line 30, somebody's rolling up the fence, somebody is hanging the hangers, somebody is filling up the stocks. There's all these things that has to be done. And it's all when you talk to shop managers today, and I'm in love with shop managers because it's my biggest potential. I want to teach the business that if you do not train your shop managers to be more than people who makes meeting lists and doing the wages and keeping the stock, you lose. If the shop managers are trained to be leaders, styling leaders, consumer leaders, you can actually, as a retail manager or a retail area manager, slowly let go. But if you keep driving around in your car and visiting whatever shops you have every 2 weeks and giving them emails with hard numbers and red and black numbers and keep saying, do more, do better, with this is the numbers, we need to reach these numbers, and everyone forgets to do the how. Everyone forgets to look at her or him and say, and this is how you do it. They will never do better. And nobody wants to do bad. That is my key frame in this business. Nobody wants to be lazy. Nobody wants to not do better than yesterday. Nobody doesn't want to have the big sale. But if for every day that you don't, you are one day further away from doing it. And it sounds so stupid and simple, but this is what I believe in. And I know that you believe that too, because I saw you addressing this when we worked together many years ago. I do believe that it's a part of you. I don't know if I'm talking on your behalf, but it's, for me, to save or even to help or to make the retail business perform, we have to look at the actual facts. We have to stop thinking that if we make all the clothes cheaper, and we make more Black Fridays and Pink Wednesdays and whatever, single Tuesdays, the cheaper everything gets, it doesn't get better for our business. We have to be better in order to listen to the client, because no matter how fast the business is going, no matter how digital we are, no matter how fast life is going, the woman and the man who gets up in the morning still has the same problems, the same questions, the same mistakes.
I think in relation to that, my experience tells me that leaving the price out of the equation when you are in dialogue and in trying to inspire the consumer with your personal shopping angle or your counselor angle or whatever you would call yourself, it has to be left out of the equation. It has to be the last thing you mention if you have to mention it.
Absolutely. Let me give you an example. I've been working with people who also has outlets. And when you have outlets alongside with your retail shops, an outlet for the people who works in the outlet is all about price. They all know that everything is cheap. So everything they communicate on their social media and in the whatever they do to get clients in, they tell people, oh, we're so cheap. We're so cheap. Oh my God, this is cheaper than ever. Now we're down to minus 70%. What they do not tell, for instance, is the calculation of what does that mean for me? Well, that actually means that if you buy this suit and these shoes and this belt and this shirt, you getting all this for 800 krona instead of 3,000 krona. Then the client can actually relate. And second, if you also explain the clothes, this suit that we have here is for you because you're tall and you have small waist. This will do this good for your body. And these shoes goes well because it gives you volume on the bottom. Then the client understands that there's something for them. People are still not interested in everything cheap. They're interested in things that works, things that makes them happy, things that makes them go out in life and not have to worry about how they look.
I can mainly speak for the male gender here, I would say, but back to so simple things as what is it you make them feel when they're looking at themselves in the mirror in the store?
Exactly.
And when you look at them and say, okay, how does that feel? Great?
Yeah.
And then they say, yeah, not that bad actually. Then you're starting to achieve something that is magic and the price doesn't matter at all here.
It doesn't matter. It never matters. And the thing is, we are so polite in Denmark. We have, and especially after all the financial crisis that we've been in, we are afraid to spend people's money. We are afraid that we're stealing, that we're cheating, that we're taking things from them that they don't want to give or to spend. My belief is that if a client opens the door, they put their coat or they went in the train or the car on the bike and they open the door to your shop, they have a purpose. It's not for you to judge whether they have the money or not. Because if they don't buy today, they might buy tomorrow. So whatever you do with them is leaving a business card saying, we want you to be comfortable and understanding what we have for you. So that's very interesting for me, and it works again and again.
So, Christina, I'm very curious to dig a little bit into this to this topic a little bit more in terms of personal shopping before we move on a little bit. So, when we talk about personal shopping in your world, what kind of elements would that include?
Yeah, well, I have, as I said, I have some packages. So for the women, I have either a package where I can come home to people and go through their wardrobe, and I make outfits that we take pictures of with their phone, so they have a whole encyclopedia of new outfits. Now, most women, when they go into the shop and they buy a skirt and a shirt, for them, unconsciously, that belongs together. They bought it that day, they put it in the bag, and for some reason, it's now matched. Very few women actually are able to know for sure that that shirt could go with those trousers that they already have, or that those leather leggings, or with those boots. So they just stick to that one outfit. And if they do that, say 20 times a year, they get maybe 20 new outfits that year. And that's a lot. Most women spend approximately 800 kroner a month on clothes in Denmark. So it's not really that much clothes. So if they, let's just say they do it 10, 15 times a year, they only think they have 10, 15 outfits. When I come, I rearrange the whole wardrobe, we take pictures, and I make every piece of clothes used 3 to 6 different ways. So that's one way of using me. Then you can add on shopping hours afterwards. I'm together with my clients maximum 6 hours. So you can either have 4 hours wardrobe, or you can have 3 hours wardrobe and 3 hours shopping. You can also just have 3 hours shopping, but that is the one product that I prefer the least, because I'm not actually interested in adding on to this consumerism. I actually want my clients to understand, what do you have, what does not work, and more important, why does it not work? Because that it's actually a bad business model, because I don't have a lot of repeaters. I have some men that uses me twice a year just to fill up their wardrobe. Most of my clients, they don't come back, because my biggest goal is to teach them not just how, but why. So when she understands, oh, all these clothes that you have in this pile over here, the reason why you don't wear it, and then I give them the reason. When I go to my clients, before I come to fix their wardrobe, they get an assignment. The assignment is to divide their wardrobe up into 3 groups. It's not just to make it easy for me, it's also for them to get a clear picture of how they're doing it, what they normally do. So I ask them to make a group that is the clothes that they spend within the last 2 weeks, or used within the last 2 weeks. Then they have a group of clothes that they haven't used for the last year. And then they have the last pile of clothes that not everyone has, which is the clothes that you bought and never wore. And I guess you can understand that the group that they use the most is the absolute smallest. And for most women, it's a huge eye-opener, because now they understand that you don't need a lot of clothes. But what I use that pile for is actually to, together with the client, to look at the stuff in there and explain to her, well, do you see all the necklines on your tops are this neckline? And they're perfect. It's the right neckline. Do you see the tops in the pile that you never used? That's because you thought you were somebody else. This is actually not bad, because you're telling me that you want to do more than what's good for you. You want to do more than what you normally do, because no women or men wants to be boring. So the messages in those piles is a big job, and that's where my big talent is. And there's nobody else who does this in Denmark, as far as I know. There's other stylists and other shoppers, but this is actually where I make most of my business. Then when we go shopping, we have made a list from what we have already used, and we only buy the things that we agreed on. I'm trying to teach the women in Denmark not to buy with their head under the arm, but to actually, like, if you're going to buy groceries for a recipe, you don't just take whatever looks good in the food shop and put it down in your carriage. You actually have an intention of what you're getting in order for this menu to be right. I'm trying to teach women to do the same with clothes. And that saves them a lot of money. So that whole day would be 6,000 kroner. And they have, I think 60% of my clients, they always write me back and explaining what it did for them. Because I can tell you that I have had no clients, no matter how small wardrobe they had when I came, I have had no clients so far who got less than 25 new outfits. The most normal is 50. I've had women who got up to 90 new outfits just because they had so much clothes they never used. And that's interesting. And that is actually where I have made my whole bank of knowledge. That's what I wrote my latest book about. My latest book is about body types, which shapes, which 6 different kind of body shapes is there for the female race, and also the styling types. Because from all this work in the last 15 years, I have made some kind of statistic, which always holds right, about what do women want, what do they wish for, what do they think is possible, and why don't they do it, which is interesting. So when we go shopping, I will also have sent them a questionnaire. I always have 12 questions I ask them about their size, height, age, what they do, what do they expect from the shopping day, what is their wish, who do they think look good, what do they always buy that goes wrong, what will they never wear. So I always question my clients, no matter if I'm going shopping or I'm going shopping and doing the wardrobe.
So when you look at the floor and we're talking to the retailers now, who we want to make a dialogue here about that, how can we approach the personal shopping experience and focus on that? There would be an element, of course, in terms of body types. There would be styling tips. What other elements would you in headlines put to that list?
Well, I mean, the different personalities that we are, whether we are an introvert or an extrovert or a person who likes to go shopping or who hates to go shopping. I mean, all the problems that you and I and our spouses and family members and friends and colleagues have, I address them. When I do my newsletters, I always address them from an angle that is something that I know that keeps women from shopping. So that could be, have you never worn a dress? Question mark. Because there's so many women who doesn't wear a dress. And then in my newsletter, I will address the actual problem and I will give them 5 solutions how to actually wear a dress. For me, wearing a dress for a woman is never about the dress. It's about the shoes and whatever you're wearing with it. It's a big eye-opener for women. I always get women who doesn't wear dresses to wear dresses by doing this action with them. So for me, it's a question of the retail business telling not what things cost, but what they do for the individual, whether it's her body type, her personality, her intelligence, or her needs. I mean, you can address people for seasons, like now everyone is addressing for the Christmas party dress and for the New Year's dress. But it seems to be always a question of the confirmation time, wedding, Christmas. All the other months, nobody addresses a specific topic. Then it's again about sale, prices, maybe it's hot, maybe it's cold. But we always forget what are they looking for and
putting the consumer first.
Always think about why did we even buy these trousers? Because somebody needs them. Why does she need them? How do we tell her?
So that kind of brings me to the other aspect that you also told me that could be really interesting to talk about, is that service is about not selling.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. Well, for me, because I'm not afraid of using the word selling, but the biggest complication when you do sales training is that people are afraid to oversell. So I always turn it around and say, well, I would be really afraid to undersell, because I would basically the hit rates, the hit rate talk. I mean, I can lie awake knowing a retail group's hit rate, because whenever you have 100 clients going through your doorbell, opening the door, and knowing that the hit rate in Denmark is often below 20, that means that 80 people left without having their dreams fulfilled. I hate that.
I just finished a sales and service program for a client that we did within 12 weeks.
Yeah.
The average increase in the stores we worked with in the hit rate was 35.6%. And we could, of course, maybe have done many things even better. But you're touching on something that there is a big potential here. It's
totally unacceptable to think that we are not supposed to sell. But when I use the phrase service is not selling, it's because if you actually know service, you have to know the products. If you actually know the products, you have something really interesting and authentic to talk to the client about. So instead of saying, hi and welcome, we have all the Christmas dresses hanging over there, and then looking at the client, waiting for the client to say, oh, I know exactly which dress I want. I'm just going to go and get it, try it on, and come and pay you. I want them to have a real conversation, and that is not selling. So if you actually know your products and you know your client, you talk to her or him for the next 20 minutes. And by the end of that talk, you have sold more than you did the day before because you were trying to sell. So that's what I mean with that phrase. I do not think that service is selling. I think that good service will accumulate sale. But I don't want, and this is something I work with, because I always hear this, oh, but I don't like to oversell. Okay, I often tell the students that I have, okay, so if you don't want to oversell, what do you want? Well, I just don't want to. Oh, I'm asking you again, what do you want? Well, I definitely don't want, so they start all sentences with the things that they don't want. And that leads back to the client, because the mindset of most women, when you interview them as a personal shopper, and in my questionnaire, I sometimes send a question that says, please list 3 things that you like about yourself. Please list 3 things that you hate about yourself. They often fill in the like with 1, and they often use 5 more lines with the things that they don't like. Now, when you know this about the client, and then at the same time you have a sales staff that are operating from what they do not want, what they do not wish to do, how they do not want to oversell, we have a problem. So they don't meet in the middle.
Yeah, and that goes back to actually their state of mind and their engagement in basically in working in the store. So there's a lot of work we also need to do in that aspect as well. And I talked to another retailer recently where we also discussed this about, well, what do you call yourself when you're on the shop floor working?
Yeah.
Who do you actually see yourself being for the consumer? A salesperson?
Yeah.
A mentor, a guide, a tour guide, whatever. But what do you call yourself? And I know it can sound a little bit fluffy, because the response I get many times is that I don't really know. I've never thought about that before.
Exactly.
Well, let's get that in order.
Yeah.
And then focus on that and how you can be authentic in that way.
Yeah. I have a game that I sometimes train on the floor, where I actually ask the shop manager to write down every person that they have hired, their names, and then on the right side of their name, what are their expertise. And very often, one is good at jeans, one is good at dresses, one is good at outerwear. And I often try to let them have a day each where they are what they're good at, and then they swap. Now you have to be good at jeans. If you're not good at jeans, you have to get the knowledge from the jeans expert. So people unconsciously have made some kind of preference, either because they are a jeans person or because they just was there the day when the jeans company came and presented the collection and they actually got the message, or just because they're really bad at selling dresses, they turned something bad into something good. Well, then at least I can sell jeans. Once you get the knowledge and you actually become mentally aware of this, you can both start developing a talent and enhancing a talent and sharing a talent. That's part of the training that I do, because I don't want people to hide in a shop. And the retail business do never get down to this thing of, what does the flow actually look like? Who is always folding clothes with their back to the door when the clothing shop is full of people? And who is always hiding behind the cashier? And who are the few people who like to be right in the front and saying welcome? And it's a special kind of person who puts themselves in every position. And it's because that's where they're safe.
I'm interested in going a little bit back to the comment you made earlier about just before about this fear of overselling.
Yeah.
That I've met many times in my career. And it's kind of funny because one of the questions I typically would ask you is that, have you ever asked the consumer or just had a conversation with the consumer where you then said, well, whatever we go through together in the time we have together here, you can always say stop.
Yeah, exactly.
And once that you have asked that question, they have to say stop before you have to stop. And if you then feel a little bit, then ask them.
Yeah.
Okay, if you feel a little bit insecure, okay, I just need to make sure here that you can always say stop, but I of course will continue because I love what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Right? There's some small, simple things that we can address here that bridges this gap we have right now.
Yeah.
Why are retailers struggling to crack the code, do you think? And now we're talking really general. We're not fighting the retailers here. We're on the same side.
Oh, well, I actually think, and I understand that it's a question of resources and time and money. I always understand that. And that's why I'm still trying to crack the code on how to service this problem without taking all their money. Because, there's a money issue. But I still believe that once you train your staff to know the products, you have dressed them to sell. You can teach them how to hang the front hangers. You can teach them how to have the same centimeters between each hanger. You can teach them how to, that colors looks nice. If you never relate the clothes to the different kind of types of clients that you have coming in, you can never recognize the client. So I think that's where they should put some of their resources. If they have small resources, I would put them there, because once you train that, and you also train the shop managers to keep doing it, having tools every day, every week. What do we do in the morning instead of talking about what did we do last night? Oh, did you buy the apartment? Oh, how did the date go? No, the last 20 minutes before you open the door is like a rock concert where they hold each other's shoulders and make a prayer or decide on something, or a football team that screams whatever words they scream in order to keep them on the same track. That's how you should train your staff in the morning, every morning. Now, let's say you just got a big load of red coats. Why don't we talk about the red coat for 20 minutes? Why don't everyone go out and get a red coat and look at each other for the next 5 minutes, and everyone has to spend 2 minutes explaining how they would sell it or telling why they cannot sell it. And then you have whatever amount of staff you have standing there, you have each person's personal opinion or problem in relation to that red coat, and the rest of that day they will sell more red coats than if they didn't address it.
It's spot on the money, and an angle to that one also, when you have those kind of a new products, or it could also be a new collection of some sorts. Okay, so now we have the red coat in our assortment from today. Guys, we have 3 people working today. We have 2 minutes each now. Find an outfit that fits this red coat perfect. Making these kind of, so we give them options and opportunities that, as you say, would hit the individual itself, but you also get the inspiration from your colleagues, and it takes no time. It's an investment worthwhile,
It's such an easy, and it's free. It's free, it's easy, and it makes sense, because it's much better to talk about what are you doing today instead of what did we do yesterday in our private lives. I'm not saying we should not talk about our private lives, but I do believe that they need to have a much better discipline and a much bigger sports spirit than blah, blah, blah until the gates open. We can't afford to think like that.
So also an aspect to this, that the last aspect I'm thinking here is also the mannequins we have in our store, quite concretely, is that when we're talking about styling our consumer, of course we are the live mannequins ourselves in the store.
Yeah.
If we're wearing Adidas shoes in a bestseller store, that's not good.
No, it's not.
But I get the point that we're not selling shoes in all the brands. I get, you know what I mean here. But second to that, you have the windows with the mannequins maybe, but you also have the mannequins maybe in your store. That is a key criteria for each area, to focus on that styling. And when me not being the product geek itself, but understanding how to use that.
Yeah.
For me, when I was getting a little bit uncomfortable in an area of a store, I would always look at the mannequins and say, okay, dear client, dear Frank, or whatever his name was, so which kind of a styling do you like the best? The one we have here in the middle wall here, or the one we have at the table? What kind of a style would you wear normally? That gave me confidence to keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
And based on that, I would try and find a perfect outfit for him.
Yeah.
You probably face that a lot as well, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And I'm always telling the staff that I train, I always ask them, which hanger or which rail in the shop do clients look most at? And when they think about it a little bit, it's actually often the one that hangs by the changing rooms, where people hang things that they have tried, because that is a message about what do other people like. And that rail is always very interesting. So I actually use that practically in my training. So once I have taught my people to do the red coat thing, I actually tell them to have a rail with 5 different stylings of the red coat somewhere in the shop. That even could look like, oh, this is for someone, or this is for a show, or this is for, we're just hanging things up. That is where the clients feel that we're not trying to sell something to them, but we have built something that could have an interest. And it works very well in a lot of the shops. I fight a lot with the retail management, because you know as well as I do that the merchandisers and everyone who's making sure that the shops look nice, they're more interested in it looking neat and cool than personal.
I'm going to go out on a field and a competence that I'm not an expert in here, because I think I understand visual merchandising and styling quite well, but I'm not a merchandiser here.
But I'm not either. Well, basically, all the tables that you have, when you walk into a shop, there's these table areas and then there's two mannequins. Now, I have often wondered why it all just has to look nice and why there's not also a story. So let's say that Gitte, who just started working, if she could actually in the morning be told that the tables and the mannequins that we have over there is for the people who doesn't like a lot of colors. And this table here is for the one with the big butt. And this table here and these mannequins are for the one who's looking. Do you understand? I want these areas and mannequins to look nice and to be fashionable, but I also want the staff to know why they look like that and for who it's made.
That makes perfect sense. And also a link to that is also, are we working based on the angles you're just adding here? Or can we also think about making the layout of the store occasion based?
Yeah.
So it's something you can use for occasions. Of course, you would take the classical ones.
Yeah.
But on top of that, you have collections all year. So there's an opportunity to say, this is where you're going to go out hang out with the guys. This is where you're going to the party Friday night, whatever. There's also some aspects you can work with there. But
if I ever had a clothing brand or a retail company, I would actually build my shop in body types. I would actually teach my staff to have, let's take the jeans section. Instead of only having them in skinny legs, wide legs, I would also have them in this body type, that body type, short legs, big butt, small butt, waist. I would even have tags on it because people love this. When I work, mentally, when I do my newsletters and when I train, I'm always thinking like a fashion magazine. I'm always trying to communicate to the person who's turning the pages. And I'm always trying to advocate the different issues that they have in their wardrobe. So in the fashion business and in the magazine business, it's a fact that the series that the high-end stylist makes in Morocco, where all the clothes are so expensive and only for skinny people, that is not the consumer's interest, that is the stylist interest. Whereas the pages where you have 10 coats for 100, 10 coats for 1,000, 10 red sweaters, that's where they sell clothes. And that's a fact. I used to work in the magazine business. Both is important. Of course, there has to be fashionable styling that we only can dream of. But we also have to give them something that they can find that's talking to them. So they can take the magazine, go down to the shop and say, I'm that person, can I buy that outfit?
Message received. So, Christina, in terms of all the things we've talked about the last small hour here, are there anything you're thinking we're missing in terms of your angle on retail and angle on personal styling and etc.?
Well, I think I've said it between the lines. There's a tendency of a lot of retail companies cutting down on the retail area managers. So the shops doesn't actually have people coming, I would prefer once a week, but coming often enough in order to keep up the training. So whatever you have taught them about the product or whatever you have done, tried a little bit, nobody keeps them up on it. And then you know, as well as I do, that the routine stops. Then you just go back to what you did before. So I would never save on that. I still can't say, because it's a question of expenses, I realize this, but I don't think it's worth money saving, because you will stand where you're standing right now wondering why there's so many people walking into shops not buying anything, because there's a hit rate problem all over Denmark. There's plenty of people in the streets. There's plenty of people going through the door. They don't buy a lot, and when they buy, they don't buy enough, so that the IPT is small.
Well, message probably from us would be that there's a lot of potential out there, and we would love to support. And there's a lot of good people besides us too who also love to work with these aspects. And for me, Christina, it's been a pleasure to get an insight into your world, especially with your personal shopping and the elements you work with there. I think you're doing, based on what I know of you, you are extremely competent and very convincing also to listen to. So thank you for spending some time on this podcast here to elaborate on your topics.
Thank you. I feel I'm on fire now. This is my favorite topic, and I don't know what to do with myself for the rest of the afternoon now.
Well, let's go out and sell some things in the stores then for some people. Yeah,
I think so.
So, Christina, before we end here, when people want to reach you after listening to this conversation, how do they best get in contact with you?
Well, I have a website, which is www.christinawedel.dk, but can I just put my email? Is that possible? Because that's the best way to get. I'm on Facebook, Christina Wedel. I'm on Instagram. You can always reach me there. And my email is just cw@christinawedel.dk. That's the best way to get hold of me.
I hope that, Christina, we will talk again, and take care until we do that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.